From pop culture to politics, this is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth, winding up another great week. This is a day that remains a great day for a great nation, despite the fact that according to one of the most respected analysts of what's going on in this country, we may have already undergone a soft breakup. Will that soft breakup become a formal separation from the various states in the country, the kind of secession that didn't work in the Civil War? We will get to that with Kurt Anderson, who has written a book about it and speculated on the idea that America has already experienced what he calls a soft breakup. What does that mean? And is that a positive development or not? We will get to that. We'll also get to the new analysis of the race for president in 2028. We talked about the Democratic side yesterday, where it's wide open and wild. The Republican side is much more limited because it's dominated by J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. But we will get to that coming up on the Michael Medved Show. And we will also be talking about the latest assault on monuments in Washington, D.C. And no, this one has nothing to do with the actions of Donald Trump, or at least it shouldn't have anything to do with the actions involving Donald Trump. We'll get to that. Meanwhile, bad news on the economic front. U.S. retail sales were the weakest in over a year as consumer sentiment plunges. U.S. retail sales gave their weakest showing in more than a year, and consumer sentiment plunged, data showed Friday today, as households battered by fallout from President Donald Trump's Iran war curbed their household spending and raised their expectations of inflation. There's no way this is good. Total U.S. retail sales were down 0.6% in July from the previous month at $763.6 billion, said the Department of Commerce. And there is also a change, according to Yahoo News and various other sources, in the top U.S. priority in the ongoing Iran war. It is no longer a nuclear program centered. It is no longer the concentration on the nuclear program by the Iranian government. The main U.S. priority, according to this report, and according to comments made by Vice President J.D. Vance, the main focus in the ongoing war is not the nuclear program by Iran, but it's to bring down gasoline prices for American consumers. The vice president said yesterday, with the Treasury Secretary adding that new economic punishment to wear down Tehran is imminent. But economic punishment, not another major bombing campaign or, God forbid, troops on the ground assault on the Iranian homeland. The comments by Vice President J.D. Vance, seconded by comments by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, illustrate the powerful leverage that Tehran has gained by shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. Preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, consistently touted by the president as his main reason for going to war, now takes a back seat to getting oil flowing again freely through the strait, so said J.D. Vance on Fox News. And there is also a new development on the struggle to try to keep Washington, D.C., a place of honor and safety and glory, with all of the big new building projects for President Trump. He just got a setback in terms of some of his plans for the big, beautiful ballroom. But another setback, a headline from CNN, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro announces the arrest of a woman over World War II memorial vandalism. D.C. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro said today that authorities have arrested a woman for allegedly vandalizing the World War II memorial in Washington, D.C., and they are charging this woman with multiple felonies. Pirro said that vandalizing our World War II memorial is a despicable attack, and she's right, on a sacred monument honoring the Americans who fought and died for freedom. Those Americans include my father and grandfather, she said. Pirro posted online Friday morning. The charges include depredation against property of the U.S. and destruction of a veterans memorial. They are separate charges. In her post, Pirro named the defendant. She's named Melissa L. Farris, and Pirro included pictures, she says, of Farris actually spray painting the memorial. Farris now faces up to 10 years in prison, which, by the way, is similar to what might be faced by Luigi Mangione, who, at least according to some reports that are going back and forth, is planning to plead guilty to his killing on the streets of New York. But in her post, Pirro, a longtime ally and friend of President Trump, was criticized earlier this month by the president when her office announced that they would be dropping charges against several people for allegedly vandalizing the reflecting pool after its botched remodel this summer. Prosecutors dropped the charges after learning that damage done to the pool was caused by shoddy workmanship, not vandalism. Trump, however, accused Pirro of, quote, folding like an umbrella. The Interior Department began investigating Washington, D.C. vandalism after neon graffiti was painted on the Atlantic Pavilion and the usually clear fountains overflowed with soapy bubbles. That's yesterday. On the inner side of the fountain, graffiti written in neon orange stated, "Clean hands, dirty $." That, according to a photo first posted by a freelance photographer and later captured by CNN. Pink and green graffiti also littered the pavilion. It looks horrible. The large whips of foam in the water appeared to be a result of someone pouring soap into the fountain. Clean hands, dirty $. And that's why they had foam with soap being poured into the water at the World War II memorial. President Donald Trump today posted on social media that the administration was on the trail of the then unnamed suspects. He called the vandals animals, and the Interior Department, in a statement to CNN, called the situation an utter disgrace. It's the latest trouble for Washington's National Mall. Renovations to the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool pushed by Trump resulted in peeling paint and huge algae blooms, plus the numbers 8647, a phrase generally used to signal opposition to Trump. We will be right back with more on The Medved Show. Concerning the vandalism at the World War II memorial, it is indeed awful, and I am very hopeful that Jeanine Pirro and the other people responsible for prosecuting this crime should receive the maximum possible penalty. The woman who's involved is named Melissa Farris. She has been identified. We don't know yet what a motive was. There are also reports that she probably didn't act alone because there was extensive graffiti and plus the putting soap into the fountain water near the World War II memorial. Meanwhile, when you talk about the the monuments in Washington, D.C., there is more controversy about the Kennedy Center and what will be written on the Kennedy Center. There's a photograph in the New York Times, which is a large photograph, and it shows the view that you have where the Kennedy Center's name is inscribed, which is now largely blocked. It appears to be some kind of cloth covering, but I'm not sure. It may be wood. Who knows? But it's a covering somewhat in the shape of a cross. And what you can read is the John Ming Arts, because the other language has been covered up. The other language said the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and it said it added the name to Donald Trump. But that's all covered up. So now it is just the John Ming Arts. It's so stupid and so unnecessary. It's actually kind of sickening. The story says that the board of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, it's all Trump appointees, voted yesterday to inscribe President Trump's name on the building beneath the main signage. That, according to people with direct knowledge of the proceedings, according to the resolution approved by the Trump Allied Board of the Kennedy Center, the inscription underneath the institution's name would now read, "Restored and renovated by President Donald J. Trump." The board's decision, which directs officials to act by all legal means, that came shortly after the board voted to move forward with Mr. Trump's plan to shutter the building for renovation for 2 years. The president's name was added to the building last year, but the judge ordered the letters taken down, finding that only Congress had the authority to change the institution's name. The center removed Mr. Trump's name in June, but it's appealing the ruling. The move appeared to attempt to find a creative workaround, love that phrase, to a provision in the federal law governing the Kennedy Center that says, quote, "No additional memorials or plaques in the nature of memorials shall be designated or installed in the public areas." Now, that's the law. But in Thursday's resolution, the board directed officials to honor Mr. Trump for bringing the center back from, quote, "the brink of disaster," unquote, presenting a series of possibilities that included naming the center's grounds the President Donald J. Trump Plaza. That'll fit beautifully with the Kennedy Center, of course. "It is hereby resolved," the resolution said that was passed yesterday, "that the center desires to recognize and honor President Trump's," of course they do, "existential and unprecedented contributions to the survival of the center by all legal means." Wait, his existential and unprecedented contributions to saving the Kennedy Center, contributions to bringing the center back from the brink of disaster. This remains to be seen. Speaking of the brink of disaster, there have been so many positive bits of news about Abdul El-Sayed, the Democratic nominee for Senate in the state of Michigan. But what a lot of people have not brought forward is the fact that he's actually doing very badly in the polls. And on CNN, Harry Enton, their data guy, has made it clear that, okay, Michigan, which is a swing state in presidential contests, has generally been a fairly democratic state in terms of local elections recently. And before that, it had a Republican cast to it. But for a Democratic nominee who's already won a nomination, Abdul El-Sayed is not doing well. Here is Harry Enton on CNN, clip 14.
Well, I was interested because I couldn't think of another example where you actually had a Democratic candidate who was down at least 4 points in a Senate poll in Michigan. And it turns out for this entire century, Abdul El-Sayed is the only one in a poll that meets CNN standards for publication. This is extremely, extremely, extremely unusual. Abdul El-Sayed breaking records in the ways that you don't want to. In fact, he is the first Democrat down by this much, as I said, in the century since 1994.
Okay, and this is very significant because if the Democrats lose a seat in Michigan, and this is a Senate seat that has been held by Senator Peters for the last 6 years, if they lose that seat, then their chances of making up, winning another 6 seats that they would take away from Republicans, that's a very tough fight, and it might shatter the Democratic dreams of moving forward with their plan to take over the U.S. Senate. And by the way, speaking of the U.S. Senate, there is also a poignant question asked to Dr. Bill Cassidy, Senator Bill Cassidy, who's also a doctor, about whether he regrets having voted to confirm Robert Kennedy Jr. We will get to that and more coming up on the Medved Show.
Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
And one of the great promises that President Trump made when he was running for president in 2024, and when he won the presidency that year, one of the things he promised was a golden age for the United States. One of the areas where we have definitely fallen short is in terms of public health. For instance, measles, which had been officially a conquered disease. Officially, we had taken measles off the table as a threat, particularly to American young people. Well, but it's back. And it's back partially because of the work of Robert Kennedy Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services, who has discouraged the life-saving vaccines that, particularly with measles, has created pockets of this disease in precisely those places where the vaccine participation is least. So in that context, a CNBC anchor asked a question to Bill Cassidy. Bill Cassidy is a physician and a distinguished physician, actually, and he is just finishing up his term in the U.S. Senate as senator from Louisiana. who ran into some opposition from President Trump, who actually supported someone who challenged Bill Cassidy in a primary election and won the nomination, so Bill Cassidy has no second term. Okay, but he does have an opinion, and he was asked very directly, does he regret voting to confirm RFK Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services? Because his vote was the crucial and decisive vote. This is clip 20.
Then to Mike's point, you ultimately voted to confirm RFK Jr. As secretary. And then you also recently cleared the way for Erica Schwartz's confirmation as CDC director. Do you regret those decisions?
Well, so first, this is a presidential executive order. RFK told me he was not going to change the ACIP. So, if you want to tell me somebody didn't tell me the truth and I should have seen in the future that they were not going to tell the truth, you can say, oh, Bill, you should have seen into the future. In which case I'd be on your show talking about the futures of stocks as opposed to vaccine policy. And I anticipate Erica Schwartz will do the right thing. She made a point that her integrity was not in question. And she's got the spine of somebody who's been a senior officer in the Coast Guard. She said, I don't need this job. My integrity is more important to me. In this case, her integrity, this system, matters to that child's.
Okay, by the way, I think he's right about Erica Schwartz. She is one of the recent Trump appointees that I think it's tough to argue against. I mean, she has a stellar record, and she does insist that she is going to put her own integrity ahead of any effort to try to placate or please the Trump administration or the president himself. Meanwhile, somebody else who has escaped the association of just being merely a toady and somebody who is simply devoted to President Trump more than to the Constitution or the public welfare or anything else is Marco Rubio. And Marco Rubio has largely escaped some of the stains that have attached themselves to the Trump administration, to this second Trump administration. And one of the things that has helped Marco Rubio is a core likability and his ability to communicate his own point of view, and not just on foreign affairs, but on issues that come up with a very wide focus that Rubio has as both Secretary of State and the Chief National Security Advisor in the National Security Council of the White House. And Rubio sat down with his wife for a lighthearted, as it's described, softball interview with Stephen Miller's wife. There's nothing lighthearted or softball about Stephen Miller, but about Katie Miller, maybe. And it did show Rubio's relatable side and his advantage as being by far the most likable person in Trump's cabinet. This is his comment in that interview about his work at the State Department, clip 15.
What's the most surprising thing about being secretary that nobody warned you about?
The interesting thing is, again, it's a different job, but when you're in the Senate for 14 years doing foreign relations, you know a little bit about how the place happens and works. I think that the breadth and scope of the State Department and power in particular, it wasn't surprising. It was revealing to me because you sort of perceived it, but you didn't realize there's a lot that other agencies do that requires the State Department to either okay or sign off on or initiate. And so I think that's surprising to me. The other, I wouldn't say it's surprising, but I came to appreciate it more, is a lot of the customer service work we do, because people think of the State Department as like diplomacy, and it is. But we also do passports. We also help people all over the world in the consulates and embassies, American travelers somewhere and they get in trouble or have a bad situation and we help them. So I think you come to appreciate like the professionalism of the people that do that work and how valuable it is. Cause for a lot of Americans, their only interaction ever with the State Department will be the day they lose their passport or the day they realize they have a cruise on Saturday morning and it's Friday and they didn't renew their passport. So I think I've come to appreciate more that part of the job that the State Department does.
And he also spoke about his favorite television show. What is it? Clip 17.
You said to Laura Trump, if you had a day off, that you would watch football all day.
I answered the question completely wrong.
Why?
Well, first of all, the right answer is I would spend it with my wife going.
Oh yeah, okay. That would a beautiful answer.
But the true answer is, and here's why I messed up that answer. Okay, because here's the thing: the day would actually start much earlier. The greatest show on television today in America is College Game Day. Great show. Starts around 10 or 11, and that leads you to noon, and then the noon game, and then there's a 3:30 game, and then so I messed, and then the idea, like this is a crazy weekend. It would never happen. So I'm just putting this out there. Okay. But you could start at 10 a.m. on Saturday. Run the whole college football day, sleep for a few hours, then you wake up and then you're into NFL game day. Then you got the 1 o'clock game, the 4 o'clock game, the NBC game that night. That is an incredible weekend, in my opinion, in my view. Obviously, I don't believe I will ever achieve this. Certainly not in the next 2.5 years or what have you. But, and your audience probably doesn't care anything about what I just said, but I'm just telling you that would be a crazy day, but that's never going to happen.
Okay, well, what did happen was Rubio's wife commented on where they disagree as a couple. We'll get to that coming up. We'll also get to the conversation launched by a leading academic about whether America is already in the process of breaking up the end of the federal union as we know it, as was established by the enormous sacrifice of the Civil War. The new Civil War, the new secession, we will get to that and more coming up on the Medved Show.
Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
A column in the New York Times by Kurt Anderson recently raised a very uncomfortable question to many people, which is, has America already undergone a soft breakup? What is a soft breakup? Well, Kurt Anderson is somebody who knows about that. He is a writer whose fifth novel, The Breakup, will be published this month in August. And it raises questions about what we're going through right now. Kurt Anderson, what is the strongest indication that you bring forward that we have already begun, if not advanced very dramatically, this process of breaking up the federal union of the United States?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, Michael. When I was starting to research this novel I have coming out next week, The Breakup, I spent a lot of time doing research because before I was a novelist, I was a journalist and have been something of an historian as well. And I discovered all of these bits and pieces that really about a dozen years ago started being a kind of unprecedented set of federal versus state and federal versus groups of states battles and kind of all somewhat constitutionally questionable and all unprecedented in the last century or so. For instance, the movement for sanctuary cities in its way of, certain cities are not going to cooperate with the federal government when they're engaging in deportations of migrants illegally here. Momentarily after that, the gun rights people in 12 states, ultimately, I believe, in more than 1,000 counties, declared themselves legally Second Amendment sanctuaries, where they would not enforce federal gun regulations. So that was sort of the start of it, and it didn't feel like a crisis then. And people, I don't think, even kind of noticed it as an aggregate phenomena, right? And then there are many other things. There are regional climate alliances. Now there are regional health alliances that basically are ad hoc interstate alliances of the right and left to have a kind of crypto-national, proto-national set of government.
Okay,
Now,
so when we had a secession movement before, which led to the Civil War,
yeah,
there were 11 states that
yeah,
withdrew from the Union.
yeah.
How many states do you think there is a realistic possibility going forward would either withdraw from the Union under a MAGA kind of ruler,
Yeah.
or if the Democrats succeed in taking over the White House and the Congress, they would respond to that kind of democratic leadership with actual withdrawal from the Union?
Well, that's exactly the future that in this novel called The Breakup, set 19 years from now, I examined and thought through and really thought through hard. And first of all, in my story, my backstory that happens before this novel takes place in 2045, there is a huge comeback of Democrats and the left, and Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. become states, and so forth and so on. So, and that eventually prompts a violent uprising. Not states, in my vision and my view, it will not be, Alabama and Wyoming join together and fight the other states. First of all, whoever controls the federal government wins in the case of an uprising, period, end of story, And so, but we could have something, for instance, parallel to the Troubles in Northern Ireland that went on for decades. We could have something like what happens with terrorist uprisings all over the Middle East and in Africa.
In your column, you mentioned Czechoslovakia, what they call the Velvet Divorce.
Indeed, that is the hopeful counterexample. If we come to a place where we decide we are irreconcilable, certain number of states would rather have their own forms of government and society and culture and not be part of a Washington-based United States. And I think if it got to that, we certainly have a template for what are the very red states and what are the very blue states now. In my story, where violence has occurred, awful violence that amounts to a civil war for a while, I think that would actually, if and when that comes, I think many, many people who consider themselves on the right, Republicans, red, MAGA, whatever, would say, hold on here. That's really not what I had in mind. So I think you wouldn't get, 23 states versus 27 states, or it wouldn't be so split. I think that would, when it comes to it.
Here's a crucial question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Is that if you have, say, 3, 4, 5 states that withdraw, would those states still be responsible for paying taxes and sending volunteers for our national defense toward the armed services of the federal union?
Well, no. I mean, secession is secession. And of course, there is no constitutional provision for secession or anything like it. And in the case of Czechoslovakia, it was ultimately very simple. In the post-Soviet era, immediately after the post-Soviet era, they said, okay, we over here in the Czech Republic, that would become that. We over here in Slovakia, we don't get along. We don't agree about it, all kinds of things. So let's split up. Okay, good, done. But yeah, that's the problem. And especially when you have these important, essential federal entities like, say, Medicare and Social Security, what happens to your hypothetical 11 states or 5 states or whatever? And say, we're going to be, and what, we want our money back from you, Washington? I don't think so. So it's very hard. And again, as I was working out how in the novel, in The Breakup, how this would happen, it would be complicated. And that's why after this violent uprising, it takes another 7 or 8 years to figure out exactly how everything would break up.
Okay, with the limited amount of time we have left, What would be the big advantage for some of the states that withdrew from the Union?
I think there'd be very few advantages for the red states. I think, well, and there's two different kinds of red states, right, in terms of their advantages or disadvantages from being part of the Union. Prosperous Western states, Texas and others that are red, and in the West, they are net givers to the national coffers, as are most of those net givers who give more than they get from the federal government are blue states. So I think the United States of America, if the states we could imagine would secede, that is to say, southern and some western states, they would do worse, in my view. I mean, they would do better in ways that might justify it to them, and being able to have fierce and strict anti-abortion laws and perhaps more religious national union, whatever, all the things that people on the right want, they could have that, but economically, they would be in rough shape.
And again, what about the security of the country?
Well, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? And negotiating who can make alliances with whom. And wait, do you want this breakaway state or states to create an alliance, say, with Russia? No, we don't, right here among us. So it would be tough. And again, if secession and full breakup happened, no, you would not have a unified national military any more than you'd have the same social security system.
Okay, this is all fascinating and challenging and disturbing, frankly. The title of the article, which is linked at our website at michaelmedved.com, is Has America Already Undergone a Soft Breakup? And your answer, Kurt Anderson, is in some ways. Would that be a good way of qualifying your response?
I would say yes, definitely. And I would say it is definitely undergoing a soft breakup, which has, in the last year and a half under this Trump administration, accelerated and become more what looks like more a kind of, if it goes on this way, an unhappy and inevitable outcome toward breakup.
And yes, and the breakup, the divorce would not be so velvet. The column is posted at our website at michaelmedved.com. His book, The Breakup, is coming out in a week, right?
Yep, next Tuesday.
And we look forward to it, but not to the subject matter coming true. Coming up on the Michael Medved Show, we will take a look at an analysis of the presidential race on the Republican side for the Republican nomination in 2028. That and more in this greatest nation on God's green earth.
The Michael Medved Show.
Listen.
Nationwide.
Listen.
And around the world at michaelmedved.com.
And listen.